Well, hello folks. Believe it or not, it's our final video of the semester. And I want to talk with you, of course, about the final exam review sheet. So if you would like to follow along with me, go to Content and then to Course Documents and then click on Final Exam Review Sheet. So the things that you need to study, you want to know the following periods and genres in American literature and their basic common themes, characteristics, and ideas. So you want to know about early 20th century prose, the Harlem Renaissance, and literature since 1945, and that includes modernism and postmodernism. So you want to study any documents that we've reviewed together since the midterm. See your syllabus and your weekly checklist for titles of those documents and instructions on how to pull them up on Brightspace, but generally they're found right here under Course Documents. You also want to carefully study the discussion boards that we've held since the midterm. Remember that these discussion boards take the place of what would have been our in-class discussions, and so that's the way that you really get into the heart of the readings, the text that we're studying together. So read all of the discussion board questions and the postings and the responses, because that will give you a very clear overview of those readings. Part 1 of the exam has 3 sections, all of which together counts for 50% or 100 points of that final exam grade. And note that the entire final exam grade counts for 20% of your final grade in the class. So the first section of part 1 consists of multiple choice questions. It's structured very much like the midterm, only the final exam is not cumulative. So in other words, it begins where the midterm leaves off. So here is an example of what one of those questions might look like. The Harlem Renaissance refers to A, a blossoming circa 1918 to 1937 of African American culture, particularly in the creative arts. B, the most influential movement in African American literary history. C, a movement that extended beyond literature, embracing musical, theatrical, and visual arts. D, a movement that sought to reconceptualize, quote-unquote, the Negro apart from the white stereotypes that had influenced Black people's relationship to their heritage and to each other. Or E, all of the above. So if you remember our studies about the Harlem Renaissance, you know that the answer is E, all of the above. And that little birdie that told me about the midterm is twittering to me in my ear again, saying this very question could be on the final exam. And as a reward to those of you who are watching this last video of the semester, there you go. You're welcome. The second section of part 1 consists of fill-in-the-blank questions, and here is an example of what one of those questions could look like. The 20th century saw the emergence of a genre called blank, which responded to the world's increasing complexity by asserting the idea that the individual had the potential to achieve a broader perspective than that offered by any one society or its history. So again, if you've been reading and studying, you know that the correct answer is modernism. So remember when we were talking about the modernist period and modernist writings, we talked about the fact that the dropping of that atomic bomb at the end of World War II really developed this new global mindset. And part of that mindset was the idea that one individual might have the ability to plunge the world into tragedy or to turn the world into something good. And with the increasing complexity of the world, the ability to travel all over the world, to communicate with other parts of the world easily through telephone, television, film, etc. The world was becoming increasingly complex, and modernism arose out of all of those things. The third section of Part 1 features actual quotes or passages from the text that we've read since the midterm, and it's your job, just as with the midterm, to identify the title of the text and the author. And as with the midterm, a listing of the text and authors will be provided to you. However, there will be more names of authors and titles listed than will be actually needed to fill in the blanks. So it will be your job to figure out which title and author goes with which quote. And again, I will not mix up the wrong title and author. Those will be correct. So here's an example of what one of those quotes might look like. As for me, I could leave the world with today in my eyes. And the answer, of course, is Truman Capote's beautiful piece, A Christmas Memory. Bertie, what did you say again? Oh, he said that one probably is going to be on the final two. Excuse me. So if you want to really do well on that third section of Part 1, you really do need to read through those discussion boards, because that's where the quotes are going to come from. The second part of the final exam will be much like the midterm. It will consist of a short essay question, and that short essay question will count for 50% or 100 points of the total final exam grade. That question will span the periods, the themes, and genres of American Lit that we've studied since the midterm. And you will be expected to write at least 4 paragraphs. If you write a little more than that, that's fine, but at least 4, or points will be deducted. You do not need a works cited page. However, you should cite in the body of your essay in correct MLA formatting, and you must quote at least 2 times. You certainly can quote more than 2 times, but if you don't quote at least 2 times and cite those quotes, then points are deducted. Your essay should also contain a formal heading on page 1, so your name, my name, the course name, and the date in correct MLA formatting in the upper left-hand corner, and then your last name and a page number in the upper right-hand corner of the remaining pages. So I give you examples, again, just like I did with the midterm, and you'll notice the way MLA formats the date, 2 May 2020, not May the 2nd, comma, 2020. There's no comma, and the day comes first, and then the month, and then the year. So I give you again an example of an incorporated quote with correct in-text citation and MLA formatting. The author masterfully presents a seemingly naive young man who poses as a Bible salesman, quote, well, lady, I'll tell you the truth. Not many people want a Bible nowadays. And besides, I know I'm real simple. I don't know how to say a thing but to say it. I'm just a country boy, unquote. And then in parentheses, the author's last name, which is in this case is O'Connor, and the page number, 362, then the last parenthesis, and then the period. The period does not come at the end of the quote, after that word boy. In MLA, it comes after the last parenthesis mark, because that now is the end of your sentence. Notice that there are bracketed words within that quote. A Bible is bracketed. So if you don't remember back from your 10 days why that would be the case, the reason we would bracket just a little word or 2, never more than 2 words, would be because we have slightly changed that wording in order to allow it to fit in with our grammatical sentence structure. So that's why the 2 words, a Bible, are bracketed there. Notice too the colon after the words Bible salesman, just before the quote. If that colon were a period, that quote would be dropped, because it would then appear all by itself as a sentence, and that's the mark of a dropped quote. I can use the colon method for integrating that quote into my sentence structure, because my sentence just before that quote is a complete sentence. It is an independent clause. If my sentence were not an independent clause, if it were a dependent clause, then I would need to put a comma right before my quote. But if I put a period before my quote is dropped. Remember too that if you're using poetry as your chosen text for part 2 of the final, you will place the line number in your in-text citation rather than the page number. Be sure not to use first or second person in your writing. So no I, no me, no you, no your. That is too informal. You do not use those words unless they're part of a quote. Your job is to create a paper that is appropriate for formal academics. And so that means that you would use one or ones instead of I or you, or just restructure the sentence to avoid that need for the type of wording like that to begin with. You want to avoid informal language like stuff, and you want to avoid vague words like thing. You want to define the thing, right? So just remember, you want to elevate your language. Little changes like using perhaps instead of maybe will really elevate your language. So here are those short essay questions, and you can choose one of these two and respond. And please do note on your paper which of the two that you're responding to. The first one is, explain why modern American literature should be studied. What universal themes does it uphold? What particular rhetorical techniques and strategies does it demonstrate? How does it help us become better, wiser human beings? You want to use specific examples of at least two texts that we've studied to illustrate your points. And they can be any two texts. I would prefer that one of them, at least one of them, is one that we read after the midterm. But if you would like for one of them to be a text that we read before the midterm, then you may do that as well. The second option is to choose and comment on two texts that we've studied this semester. What are the main messages and themes present in those texts? How do the writings compare with one another? What are their similarities? What are their differences? So note that you can comment on genre. Are they both examples of realism? Or maybe is one realism and the other indicative of naturalism? You can comment on similar rhetorical techniques. Are you seeing examples in both of them of metaphor or symbolism or imagery or imagism or whatever it might be? You can comment on plot, characters, any other element of those two texts. You'll take part one of the final by going to quizzes up at the top of our Brightspace course page, and then by looking for final exam part one. And the questions will be multiple choice. They will be timed. And note that the final exam, both parts 1 and 2, will open at 2:20 p.m. on Wednesday, December 9th, which is the time before our final. And you will need to take both of these parts of the exam before 2:20 p.m. on Thursday, the 10th. So you'll have a 24-hour period there in which to take parts 1 and 2. You can upload your short essay for part 2 into the assignments section on our Brightspace course page. And once you click on assignments, look for final exam part 2. And again, you're going to upload your draft no later than 2:20 p.m. on the day of our final exam, Thursday, the 10th of December. That's the time that our exam would have ended. But it will all open for you exactly 24 hours earlier, 2:20 p.m. on Wednesday, the 9th of December. So you have 24 hours to finish both parts and get them uploaded. So you can post any questions that you may have about the final exam under the final exam topics or final exam questions topic session in the final exam discussion board, or you can email me. So here are a few final exam policies and end of the semester policies that I just want to quickly make you aware of. Final grades for your classes can be found by going to My Pellissippi and looking under final grades. And while we instructors are responsible, obviously, for submitting your final grades into the system, we're not the ones who actually allow you to see them in My Pellissippi. That's the higher powers that be of IT who manage all of that. Generally, though, grades become visible to you a day or 2 days after we've posted them. But if you were to email us and ask us exactly when they will appear, we actually cannot answer that question because, as I say, we do not manage that part of the process. So we do upload your grades into the system, but we do not make them visible to you. Please do not email me asking for your grade on the final exam or for the class, because we are just inundated at this point in the semester with grading and posting grades and checking all the calculations. We each have about 100 people that we're dealing with, and it's just impossible to respond to individual inquiries. Note that you can see your current grades for all the assignments in the class so far by going to grades on our Brightspace course page. Grades are calculated by the Brightspace system. However, I'm old and I don't trust computers, so I keep a separate hard copy of grades that I manually enter and check against Brightspace and check the calculations to make sure that they're correct. And then finally, I just want to say that I have really, really enjoyed having each one of you in my class this semester. I know that this semester has been different and it's been challenging for all of us. And I know that you would have preferred more than likely that we had been able to be face-to-face in a real classroom. I certainly would have preferred that, but I'm thankful that we have the ability to keep going with our studies online, and I thank you for hanging in there with me. If I can ever do anything to be of help to you in the future, please do not hesitate to email and hopefully even to visit me live and in person next semester. You have been one of my all-time favorite groups. So best of luck to you with your final exams and happy holidays.